morning. Welcome to this video lecture on computer organization. I myself is Hanumantaraju MC. I am an assistant professor. I am working in the Department of Information Science, Dayanand Sagar College of Engineering, Bangalore. So in this course, we are going to talk about computer organization. So computer organization is a course for fourth semester BE Information Science and Computer Science students. Let me define what is computer organization. So computer organization is the arrangement of all functional units of a computer to achieve some desired goal. And here in this video lecture I am going to cover the first chapter of the syllabus of VTU. So before we start into the lecture, let me give some introduction about what we are going to discuss. The chapter 1 is basic structure of computer, which we are covering in this video lecture. Before we go into this chapter, we will start with a proverb called as a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, and of course this is given by the Albert Einstein. The main goal of this proverb is in order to understand the entire computer organization, we should start with understanding the basic structure of the computers. Once we understand this, taking this as a first step, you can understand the whole computer organization. The main motivation of this video course is our HOD, head of the department, Dr. M. Ravi Shankar. I would like to thank for motivating me and preparing this video lecture for the fourth semester BE Information Science students. I also extend my thanks to the all staff members and my colleagues who directly or indirectly supported me to prepare this video lecture. And I'm going to cover these topics in this video lecture. Firstly, let us start with basic structure of a computers. In this topic, you are going to learn various structure of a computers, followed by computer types, starting from the microcomputer to the supercomputer, and later on we will study the functional units of each and every part of the computer. Basic operational concept introduces the connection between the processor and memory, and further we are going to study the bus structures, types of bus structures and its function. Next is going to be the performance, where we are going to evaluate the performance of a computer. The processor clock plays an important role in the computer design. The small clock, the speed of a computer becomes less. If you connect a very high speed clock, the speed of a computer increases. And in this topic, we are going to see that on what factor does the clock depends upon. Next, we are going to evaluate the performance by using a equation called as a performance equation, and the clock rate also plays an important role in evaluating the performance of a computer. And we have some benchmarks to measure the performance of a computer. That's how we study the performance measurement. And finally, this chapter ends with historical perspective, where we are going to discuss a brief history how the computer evolution has been taken place. So these are the topics which we are going to cover in this video lecture. The aim of this chapter is to discuss the basic structure of a digital computer. Sometimes you can also call computer or digital computer is one and same. And also we are going to study the how exactly we can organize various units like control unit, arithmetic unit, and logical unit, memory unit, and input output unit in a computer. So that's the aim of this chapter. The main objective of this chapter is to thoroughly understand the basic structure and operation of a digital computer, and also we discuss some of the operations like fixed point operation and floating point operations, which includes addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And we are going to study the in-depth about control system design, and as well as pipelining concept, which has been adapted to the computer architecture design. and we're going to touch upon the memory system, which is also called hierarchical memory system, which includes cache memory. So cache memory is a memory which is a very fastest memory compared to the main memory, and we're going to discuss more about this in the upcoming video lectures, and we are going to discuss even the virtual memory also. That's a part of this the computer organization. And next, our main objective is to discuss the communication between the IO devices and standard IO interfaces which we come across. The textbooks which your students has to refer are going to be like this. The main required text for the university is going to be the title is computer organization, and this is 5th edition student has to purchase, and this is authored by 3 people: Karl Hamacher, Zhang Varansik, Soft Zaki, and the publisher of this book is Tata McGrail, and it was in the year 2002. And mainly I suggest you to look into the edition. 5th edition is the recommended for this subject. And of course there are 2 reference textbooks which I am going to mention for this subject, computer organization. The one is going to be Computer Organization and Architecture, 7th edition by William Stallings. Publisher is going to be Printissal of India. And another reference textbook is going to be Computer Systems and Architecture. This is going to be 2nd edition and authored by Vincent P. Uring and Harry F. Jordan, and the publisher is going to be the Pearson Education. Students may also refer these 2 textbooks to get an additional information, but the main textbook required is going to be the Computer Organization by Karl Hamacher. So before we commence our chapter, let us define what is a computer or digital computer. So computer is an electronic it's a system which is also called as a calculating machine, because this mainly works on the binary number system, and mainly this computer accept digital information as a input and process that digital information according to the program. So program is nothing but it's a set of instructions or group of instructions. In advance we are going to store this in memory to make the execution faster, and after the execution of the program, the computer produces the required results, and that is taken as output. That's what computer does. So computer takes input as digital data, process that according to the program, and sends result to the output unit. So that's a basic definition of a computer. So if you look at simplest form of a computer, which requires mainly the 5 functional units, an input unit, which is a standard input unit is going to be the keyboard, a memory unit, which may be the RAM, ROM, maybe EPROM and EEPROM. There are many memory units are there. Arithmetic and logic unit, which is the main component of the computer, which will perform the arithmetic and logical operations, and an output unit where the result has to be sent so that the user can easily understand the results according to the program which has been inputted by the user. And another important part is going to be the control unit, which will control the all other units of a computer. And if you in present scenario, if you look at the computer, this is actually the inside, what are the components are present. We'll have just a view. Inside a computer you can see the CD drive where you can insert the CD. CD stands for compact disc, and mainly you have here the CD can be inserted and you can read the data from the CD, it's possible. And we have a zip drive where you can the compressed data, and that's one of the requirement. And the main requirement is going to be that to power up the system we have a power supply, which is a separate block. Here we have an adapters which will cut down the input to 220 volts and supply the power to the various units of the computer. And for that we have a power card where we apply 220 volts of power. And we have here floppy drive. It's a device which stores a small amount of data, and that data can be read through the floppy disk controller, which is the part of this floppy disk, floppy drive, and when hard disk drive, where you can see you can store the large amount of data. Typically, the 100 GB or 200 GB amount of data can be stored in the hard disk. And we have you can see various white color, the buses here. You can also call them as a cables, and these buses are required to connect various functional units, and that's a requirement of the cables. And if you come to the external side, you can see the mouse cable here, where you can connect the mouse, and you can have the keyboard connector here, where the keyboard device is plugged through this plug-in. And here we have a video connector, where you can connect this to the monitor, and we have a sound port here, where you can connect microphone, or you can say speakers, to have a audio and as well as effect. And we have here something called a modem, where you can connect to the internet. So modem stands for modulator and demodulator. So this is the typical view of today modern computer. Further, we discuss types of computers. So computers are classified basically on different parameters, like speed of operation, cost, size, and as well as computational power, and also on the application. So mainly the computers can be put into the totally 7 categories. Microcomputer, which is a very small computer, and this computer is based on the microprocessor, and this has got the small keyboard, and small the input device, which is the input keyboard, and small memory, and small output device. So this microcomputer is completely based on the microprocessor. And next we have a further a mini computer, which will support tens of hundreds of users simultaneously, and this mini computer is the bigger version of the microcomputer. Next we have something called as a personal computer, or you can say it's an desktop computer. This is mainly the which will support the single user, and even this is also personal computer, desktop computer, which is based on the single user, and this typically uses a microprocessor as the CPU. And today you can see the personal computers in the schools, homes, and offices, and this personal computer is going to be cost effective, and it's going to be the compact, and there's lots of advantages are there with respect to the personal computer. And next we have a very compact version of computer called as a notebook computer, which is also called as laptops, and mainly for the presentation purpose, you can use this notebooks, and the configuration of the notebook computer is almost same as the personal computer. And notebook computers are available with the different cost, and there is something called the which may have less configuration, and notebook are available with very huge configuration, and lots of the trends are there in the notebook computers. And next, moving on to the workstations. So workstations are mainly used for engineering applications, like the CAD and as well as CAM, in mechanical applications, and this requires the moderate amount of the computing power. This need not require very huge computational power. So moderate computational power is sufficient, and this is mainly used for high graphical applications. And next we have something called as a mainframes. These are mainframes are going to be the very large and expansive kind of computer, and this supports typically hundreds of thousands of users simultaneously. Mainframes are just they are very much below the supercomputers. At last we have a supercomputer, which is extremely faster computers, and they are capable of executing the hundreds of millions of instructions per second. And these supercomputers are very much expansive, and they are going to be employed in some special applications, and where the large amount of calculations has to be done. And the overall computers can be classified into the which has been divided into the 5 functional units. If you can see that on the screen, there is a something called as a input unit, and the next we have a memory unit where the data storage can be done, and we have an arithmetic and logic unit, and here we have a control unit. That together ALU and as well as control unit can be called as a central processing unit. And here we have an output unit. Both input and output unit can be called as IO. So these are the various functional units of a computer. If you come across input unit, so input unit may be the keyboard, mouse, scanner, etc. So where the user normally gives the input through this, and basically the computer is going to accept information from the user through the input device, and it converts into the coded format. If you see any keyboard, if you press any key, normally that is taken as an ASCII value. So that's the CPU accept from the input device in the form of a code, not directly the data. That's one of the requirement. And next we have an CPU, which is called as a central processing unit. This is a brain of a computer, and this has got the two important parts, arithmetic and logic unit, and as well as a control part. So ALU, also ALU inside it contains many other registers which is meant for storing the data temporarily during the calculations. ALU contains a register array, and as well as to store the data temporarily. ALU performs addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and logical operations like AND operation, OR operation, NOT operation, XOR operations, and many other logical operations can be performed in the ALU. And there's a, as we said already, this contains the temporary storage, which is nothing but registers. And the control unit contains this we are going to connect a clock here, which in turn controls the entire system. So clock is basically today's computer. You can see that there is a 2.66 gigahertz clock, and computers are available with even higher clock frequencies. And coming to the memory unit, so memory unit is it's a storage device in a computer system. There are two classes of memories are there, which we'll discuss in the upcoming slides. The primary memory, which is also called as a main memory, and there is something called secondary memory, which is nothing but the magnetic memory. And this, if you look into this, it contains several flip-flops. Each flip-flop is one of the storage, the cell. And here the main important thing is the large amount of data can be stored in the memory, and a small amount of data can be stored in the ALU registers while calculation is going on. And next we have an as we said already, the output unit, where the result given by the CPU is sent to the output unit. So here's the standard output unit is going to be the monitor, or even the output unit can be the printer or LED, light emitting diode, liquid crystal display. There are many other output devices are there, and whatever the data or result given by the this ALU block, and if it is the data is result is sent to the output unit, it has to be converted to the format which is understandable by the user. As we already said, that input unit is input data is given through the input device, and the computer takes that in the coded format and do calculations on the coded format and send back result to the output device. And once again the result has to be converted to the format which is understandable by the user. So this is the overview of the computer, basic units of the computer. And let me define what is an information with respect to the computer. Information in a computer is nothing but that it may be the instruction or data. So both are called as an information, and both are fed through the input device. So if you look into the instructions are the commands which are given to the computer. Instructions themselves transfer the govern the computer, and even the data also is nothing but it's a number which is encoded in the form of a characters. So instruction and data both are stored in the memory to make up the execution very much faster. Now let us see that how the program execution takes place. So as we already said, that program is nothing but it is a group of instruction is called as a program. And in normal operation, the user is going to input the program through the input device, or else he may store the program and data in the memory in advance to speed up the process. And the computer takes one by one in a selected manner and start working on them according to the instructions. And finally, when the ALU or CPU computes, it sends the results to the standard output unit. That's how the program execution takes place. Coming to the memory, as we said, memory is divided into the two classes, namely the primary memory, or called as a main memory, or secondary memory. There are two types of memories. Small amount of data while calculation can be stored in the primary memory. Large amount of data which can be stored in the secondary memory. Primary memory is the very fast memory, and this is quite costly also compared to the secondary memory. And the speed of primary memory is going to be electronic speed. It's a couple of nanoseconds. That's how the primary memory works. Then I'm planning to say that the speed at which data transfer takes place is going to be in a couple of nanoseconds. High speed memory is going to be the primary memory. So normally we store the programs and data while calculation or execution is going on the CPU in the primary memory. So here data is stored in the form of the fixed size words, and each word is assigned with some unique kind of address, and words can be accessed in a random order also, it is possible. And another type of memory which we come across is secondary memory or secondary storage, and this is quite slow. This is away from the CPU, and this is secondary memory is less expansive, and it's a low cost storage system. So one can store data and program even in secondary memory also. Data access is typically direct or sequential kind of access takes place in case of secondary memory. So next we are going to discuss basic structure of the CPU and as well as interconnection with main memory. Here you are seeing the main memory, and the processor contains various other blocks. Let us define one by one. MER stands for memory address register, PC stands for program counter, IR is an instruction register, MDR is the memory data register, R0 to Rn is going to be general purpose registers, and here we have a control unit, arithmetic and logic unit, which performs arithmetic and logical calculations. This whole thing block is rectangular block is called as a CPU, central processing unit. And we will see that how the instruction execution takes place. Mainly this shows the interconnection between the main memory and the processor. So basically the program counter, which contains the address of the next instruction to be executed, and the MER, memory address register, is nothing but this also contains it's a register which contains an address, and MDR contains the instruction as well as the data of the program, and IR contains actual instruction, and R0 to Rn are the temporary storage registers. Control unit contains the hardware which is going to control the all other blocks of the computer. ALU performs the arithmetic and logical operations. Let me repeat once again. MER stores the address, PC stores the address, IR stores the actual instruction which is executing, MDR stores the instruction as well as data. R0 to Rn is nothing but general purpose registers stored for during the execution. CPU can send results to one of them, and CPU also can read data from one of these registers, and ALU stands for the arithmetic and logic unit. The execution takes place like this. If the first instruction is address is given to the PC, because PC points to the next instruction to be executed by the processor, so the same PC transfers its address to the memory address register, and later this memory address register, once the control unit sends the read control signal to the main memory, this places the required instruction or data into the MDR, which is pointed by the MER, and later on the MDR transfers the instruction to the IR register and data to the one of this R0 to RN. Further, the PC gets incremented. Again, PC is going to transfer the address to the MER. MER transfers the instruction or data to the MDR once the control signal is issued. That's how the interaction between the main memory and processor takes place. And all this is once again explained. IR is an instruction register. It's a storage area for the instruction which are currently being executed. PC stands for program counter. This is a storage area which contains the main memory address of the next instruction to be executed. R0 to Rn are the general purpose registers, which is also called as a scratch pad storage area. This for the currently executing program, data can be stored in the R0 to Rn. MER stands for memory address register, which is once again storage area. This contains address in main memory to which data has to be transferred to or transferred from. Next we have an MDR, memory data register. So this is also called as a memory buffer register, where storage area, it's a storage area for the data that is written into or read out of the addressed main memory location. So typically if you look at execution of a program, the following steps has to be followed. The first step in program execution or instruction execution is going to be like this. Programs are placed into the main memory via the input unit. That means user has to place the programs to the main memory basically by using input device. Next we have a step number 2. The PC is set to the address of the first instruction of the program. So PC is nothing but it's a program counter which has to point to the first instruction, or I can say the address of the next instruction to be executed by the CPU. Next we have an memory address register which will be getting the address from the PC. The MER is assigned with the value of the PC. Next we have the control unit sends the read request to the main memory, causing the instruction pointed by the MER to be placed in the MDR. The instruction is moved from the MDR into the IR. The instruction in the IR is executed by the CPU. If the instruction is just executed, caused a branch to occur, then the do nothing else. And just you keep on incrementing the value of the PC, and these steps are repeated from the 3 to 7, 3 to 8. These steps keeps on repeating for every instruction. Let us discuss the various components of a computer. The various components of computer can be typically connected together with the help of a bus. There are many different types of buses are there. Simply we can define the bus as a group of connecting wires, or a group of connecting signals can be called as a bus. We have different types of bus configurations are there. The first one is going to be the single bus configuration, where you can see the all units, input unit, output unit, memory unit, and the central processing unit. All these are connected through the single bus. The main drawback of this is at a time only the two of this block can communicate. Example, if input unit is sending some data to the memory, so other units should remain as idle, and if the CPU is writing some result to the output device, remaining units should be idle here. So only one bus is going to be used to connect all the units of a computer. So such a configuration is called as a single bus configuration. So next we have an two bus configuration. Here you can see that there are two types of buses are there. One is going to be the IO bus, and other one is going to be the memory bus. You can have the two different types of two bus configurations. Here you can see that CPU is going to be the mediator between the IO unit and the memory, and in the second case the memory is going to be the intermediate between the input unit and the CPU. In both cases we have an IO bus and as well as memory bus. This kind of configuration is called as a two bus configuration. Next we look into the performance of a computer. As we said that to judge whether a computer is good or bad in its performance, we will mainly look into the certain criteria. The first and foremost criteria is going to be the speed. You can say that if X industry manufacture computer A and if Y industry manufacture computer B, if computer A manufactured by X industry, if it's working at a high speed, then we can say that computer A is having a best performance. So speed of a computer is one of the important criteria to judge the performance of a computer. And if a computer works at a high speed, it's having a best performance. Otherwise, such a computer is not having a best performance. Speed depends upon the hardware which has been designed and its machine language. Okay, so these are the two parameters on which speed depends upon. Also, we have a compiler. So compiler is also called as a translator, which will convert high level language to the machine level language. And we have a machine instruction set and as well as hardware. So these three things, compiler, machine instruction, hardware, has to be designed in a coordinated way to achieve the best performance. Next, we are going to define what is called as a processor time. The processor time is nothing but time taken by the processor to execute some program in the high level language, and the processor time depends upon the hardware and as well as machine instruction. Next, we have an instruction execution steps. If any computer wants to execute instruction, it has to fetch the instruction first, decode the instruction, and after decoding, execution will take place. Once execution is over, storage of result takes place to the memory. So these are the four main steps in the instruction execution. Next, we have to make it execution faster, user can store instruction and data in the memory advance. The bus definition is it's a group of connecting wires or connecting signals is called as a bus. Bus is required to connect various functional units of a computer. Instruction is nothing but it's a command given to the processor to do the required task. Based on the instruction, the computer performs the required task. The program is nothing but set of instructions is called as a program. Flip-flop is a 1-bit storage cell. A 1 flip-flop can store either 1 or 0. 1 is equivalent to the 5 volts in electronic domain, and logic 0 is equal to the 0 volts. If you group several flip-flops together, it becomes a register. So register definition is group of flip-flops. Example, if you look at 8-bit register stores the needs say 8 flip-flops. And memory, the definition of the memory is it's a group of registers, can be called as a memory. And if you look at processor clock, today's processor clock works at megahertz. Mega is nothing but 10 power 6, or else even gigahertz also, which is nothing but 10 power 9. So these are the different clock frequencies which processors are going to be connected. Higher the frequency, speed becomes more. Lesser the frequency, speed is less. So if you look at basic performance equation, so the equation is T is equal to N into S divided by R. That is the basic performance equation, where T is nothing but it's a processor time. It's a time taken by the processor to execute some program in some high level language, and capital N stands for number of machine language instructions, and capital S stands for average number of basic steps needed to execute one machine instruction, and capital R is nothing but it's a clock rate, a number of cycles per second, and also the capital R is also can be interpreted as frequency. So if you look at the basic performance equation, T is equal to Ns divided by R, what we aim is T should be as small as possible. To make it T as small as possible, we should make the capital N smaller, or else you should make the capital S smaller, or else increase the value of R. So T is basically the processor time. So processor should take less time to execute the programs. So to achieve the best performance, N and S should be made as small as possible, and R should be made as large as possible. So R is increased by connecting the high frequency clock, but you cannot connect the clock randomly. Clock is an architecture dependent, and it's a the hardware designers come out with a different set of clock frequencies. So programmers cannot change the clock frequencies. However, N is dependent on the compilers. N is nothing but number of machine language instructions, because when you compile any program uh, in high level language, it is converted to machine language, and the number n depends upon the compiler. If n is equal to small means it's a good compiler, if n is large means it is an bad compiler. So s depends on the basic steps. It's nothing but average number of basic steps required to execute one machine instructions. So what we expect is s should be as small as possible. So decreasing the s makes the t as small as possible. So these are the various issues present in this basic performance equation. Let us see that how to measure the performance of a computer. The performance of a computer is measured by the three group of people, and their aims are going to be totally different. So there are three groups of people are going to be like this: computer designers, who measures the computer in order to evaluate the effectiveness of the new features, and basically manufacturer, they are going to evaluate the performance in order to do the marketing process, and the purchasers, they are going to evaluate the performance of a computer to select the many one among the many computer models. And there's something called as a benchmark programs. Suppose if you come out with a new computer, and you cannot say that it's your computer is the best computer unless it is going to be evaluated by certain benchmark programs. So definition of benchmark program is, so these are the standard programs which compares the different processors. And there is one organization called as a System Performance Evaluation Corporation. They are going to evaluate the performance of a computer. Now let us talk more about this spec. So spec, as we defined, System Performance Evaluation Corporation. This is a non-profitable organization, and this company is not meant for any profit making. And this was founded in 1988 by the large group of workstation vendors. And today you can see that there are more than 60 member companies which belongs to the spec. And moreover, this is a spec is a successful performance standardization body. The main goal of the spec is to select the programs and publish the program of different application domains, and also they provide the test results for the commercially available computers. Programs which are compiled by the reference computer are compiled by the reference computer, and a processor time is measured. And whatever the if a user a programmer is going to come out with a new computer, he can compile the same set of programs, and he can start measure the t value, and you can compare which one is best. If you as computer under test is taking the less time, definitely the this is going to be better than the reference computer. And normally spec is going to select the programs from the various fields, like the programs belonging to the games, system software, databases, and numerical computations. Spec rating is computed as follows. So anybody can compute the spec rating by using this formula. The spec rating is given by running time on the reference computer to the running time on the computer under test. If you just divide the running time of reference computer by running time of the computer under test, one can evaluate the spec rating. So there are various reference computers which the spec is going to release. Spec 95 uses the Sun Spark processor as the reference computer, and Spec 2000 releases Ultra Spark workstation as the reference computer. If the spec rating is equal to 50, means computer under test is 50 times faster than the reference computer. And a tester is going to repeat for all the programs. Suppose if you run the 5 programs, then I will be the range of this product will be from 1 to n. This is actually the I is the index, and capital indicates number of programs. You can compute the spec rating for each and every programs, so where n stands for the number of programs. So that's how one can evaluate the performance of a computer. So coming to the multiprocessor and multi-computers, so we have a system called as uniprocessor system, system with only one processor, and there is a system called with more than one processor, which is called as a multiprocessor, where we can have the parallel systems. System with more than one processor is called multiprocessor system, and there is something called as a multi-computers, where we will have the several group of computers where they are interconnected to get the very high computational power. and there is a systems called as a distributed systems, or you can say loosely coupled systems, where the systems are going to be distributed at several different places, uh, so that in order to evaluate the performance of a computer. So pipelining and superscalar operations. So pipelining is one of the important technique to increase the throughput of a computer. So pipelining means it's a overlapping of the execution of the successive instructions. Pipelining improves the throughput or computation rate of the system. The definition for throughput is number of tasks completed per unit time. Pipeline increases the throughput of a system, and basically the in order to implement the pipeline, one should have the instruction queue, which is basically works on the principle of first in first out. So normal execution of a computer is basically sequential. So pipelined computer executes in a overlapping fashion. That means instructions are overlapped in the pipelined computer. And if you see the another type of operation called as a superscalar operation, which has been implemented on the supercomputer. This superscalar operation can be implemented when you have the multiple functional units, and so all functional units are going to execute in a parallel fashion, so that the system with superscalar operation becomes an extremely faster because of multiple functional units, and this superscalar operation has been implemented in the supercomputers. And we can classify even computers based on the instruction set. We can classify computers into the two types based on instruction set. One is the RISC computer, which stands for reduced instruction set computers, and another type of computer is going to be the complex instruction set computers. In RISC computers, individual instructions are simple. For a given program, this RISC computer needs more number of instructions. In other way, you can say that n is very much large for the RISC computer, and s becomes very much small for the RISC computer. Already we defined n is nothing but number of the machine language instruction, and capital S stands for the average number of basic steps required to execute one machine instruction. There is another type of computer, complex instruction set computer, where individual instructions are very much complex, and that's the definition for the CISC computer. And in this case, if you want to write any program using a CISC computer, definitely this needs less number of instructions, so n becomes very much small, total number of machine instructions. However, the s becomes a very large value, so s stands for average number of basic steps. So coming to the history of a computer, the computers are history or evolution of a computer can be broadly divided into the 5 different generations. The first generation computer, which are based on the vacuum tubes; second generation computers, which are based on the transistor; third generation computers, which are based on the integrated or IC technology; and fourth generation computers, which are based on the very large scale integration technology, shortly you can say VLSI technology. And beyond fourth generation, some of the techniques like artificial intelligence, parallel systems, and distributed systems has been applied in the fifth generation or beyond fourth generation computers. The very first computer was the analog computer, which was built by Charles Babbage, and first electronic computer was developed by the University of Pennsylvania, USA, and which is based on the vacuum tube technology. So let us go through the various generation. The first generation computers is based on the stored program concept, and this concept was developed by John von Neumann, and is a person responsible to develop this stored program concept. And in this first generation computers, we are going to store the program and data in the same memory. And in the first generation computers, assembly level language was used, and this first generation computers was based on the vacuum tubes, and the obviously the vacuum tubes get heated up because of if you switch on for a long time. And in the first generation computers, we are using magnetic cores and magnetic tapes as the storage devices. There were nothing like IC version of memories. And typically, if you look at the first generation computers, they are very much faster than the electromechanical computers, which are based on the relays. And here we are using IO functions as typewriters. Today, whatever you find typewriters, the same keyboard was used for the sending the information and getting the result. Okay. Next we have a second generation computers, uh, which is which uses transistors. So all transistors were okay used in the second generation computers. There is no vacuum tubes, so all vacuum tubes were replaced with the transistors. And the second generation computer, which is based on transistors, was developed in the year 1948, after the 1948, after the invention of the bipolar junction transistor at AT&T Bell Laboratories. And again, in the second generation computers, magnetic core memories and magnetic drum storage devices were used. And there's an features has been enhanced. Instead of assembly level program in the first generation, we are using high level language in the second generation computers. Example for high level language is Fortran, which is nothing but formula translation. And some system programs were developed in the second generation computers, like compiler, which translate high level program to the assembly level programs. And in the second generation computers, separate IO processors were used, which mainly operate in parallel with the CPU. And of course, IBM become major computer manufacturer, which started manufacturing second generation computers. And third generation computers are basically which is based on the IC technology, where you can put fabricate many transistors, thousands of transistors on the single chip. Using IC technology, the cost of the computer and speed, which has been increased, cost has been come down, speed has been increased, and power requirement has been come down. So these are the advantages which we are going to gain in the third generation computers. And in the third generation computers, instead of magnetic memories and magnetic drums, integrated circuit memories were used. So that means IC memories are replaced with magnetic memories. And several new techniques like micro programming, parallelism, pipelining. So these new concepts were adopted in the third generation computers. And the concept of operating system was developed in the third generation computer. And later on we added the cache memory and virtual memory to the third generation computers. And here we have a the industry started manufacturing the mainframes and mini computers. And also there are two industries which come forward to manufacture third generation computers. IBM and Digital Equipment Corporation are the two industries which come forward to manufacture the third generation computers. And the third generation is mainly between 1965 to 1975. And if you look at second generation, it is from the 1955 to 1965. And if you look at the first generation, it is from the 1945 to 1955. So every generation gap is given at least 10 years of duration. And going to the fourth generation, which is based on the very large scale integration technology, where you can put the thousands of transistors on the single chip. And here the processor and main memory has been fabricated in the single chip. And mainly the many industries come forward now to manufacture the fourth generation computers, like Intel is the the processor manufacturing leader, and Texas Instruments, Motorola, National Semiconductor. There were many industries which come forward for the fourth generation computer manufacture. And the concurrency and pipelining concept were adopted in the fourth generation computers. In the fourth generation, you can see the notebooks were developed, which are portable, and desktop, which was available at low cost, and workstation computers also developed in the fourth generation. And also the cache and virtual memories were very much compact in the fourth generation computers. The fourth generation computers can be connected to the local area network, where you can group at least 50 to 100 computers and transfer information. And using computers, fourth generation computers, you can create a wide area network. And you can also connect to the internet using world wide web, using the fourth generation computers. And here the centralized computing was on the mainframes. That was the interesting thing in the fourth generation computers. And if you look into the beyond the fourth generation, we have something called as a fifth generation computers, which is currently which is going on after the 1975 onwards, which is mainly we are going to adopt artificial intelligence to the beyond fourth generation computer, and we are going to create excess of parallel machines, and mainly the systems are going to be distributed in extensive manner. So this is the end of the first video lecture, which is on the chapter 1, and I will be very much happy if you can provide a feedback by sending me the mail. This is my email ID, and any comment you can add up through this mail, and I request you to watch out the next upcoming videos on other chapters of this computer organization. So thank you for your patience.